Our first speaker joined the Air Force after finishing school, did a tech course on instruments. At the same time he learned to fly privately, and he's carried this on as he's become more successful in business into flying more advanced aircraft such as business jets. But his main business is telephone systems. I first met him when he was Vice President of IOPA, and we had a meeting down at Narrogin, and he showed me his beautifully restored Cessna 420. But he's now got a T28 parked out the front, and I'd like now to introduce Tony Mitchell to tell us about flying it over from the eastern states.
Okay guys, the object of the exercise is to talk about bringing this aircraft across from the eastern states, but more importantly to actually talk about the type of aircraft a bit. It's a very misunderstood aeroplane. The T28 was actually designed in the mid-50s as a lead-in trainer for the F-86 Sabre, and I've got the aircraft parked out the front of you later on if you have a look at it. The instrument panels, both of them in the aeroplane, actually mimic the Sabre instrument panel as does the blood grade throttle lever and other bits. But it was designed as a lead-in trainer. At that time it had an 850 horsepower engine on the front of it, a Pratt, with just a two-bladed propeller, and the aircraft then suffered a little bit of a backward step as the outer wing panels came off them when they were in aggressive manoeuvring. So they actually then developed another aircraft, the B model, which was then up to 1425 horsepower, which is the current power that's on them. And the Navy then developed an aircraft with a hook on the back for carrier training. Although the aircraft didn't ever land on carriers, it only ever landed on land-based carrier bits painted on runways. It also had the 1425 engine on it, but a different propeller and a smaller nose wheel. And on the bottom of it had a great big speed brake so that they could maintain power in the glide slope. The aircraft parked out the front is actually a T28D, which started life as a trainer, but after 1 year the aircraft was recalled by the Air Force and rebuilt in 1962 to what is known as a D model, which is not a trainer. The aircraft has 3 hard points under each wing. It's actually a ground attack aircraft, and this aeroplane was then sent from the United States to Laos, to the Lao Air Force, but it was never, at that stage it was still retained by the USAF on charge. It was then 18 months later taken back by the USAF and operated in the back of Vietnam on covert ops in a program called the Ravens program for a number of years, where it sustained some damage, and it's got the odd bullet hole in it that's been repaired by shonky repair methods. Yeah, but all down towards the back of the aeroplane, thankfully. The aircraft is a lot stronger than the original aeroplane. The outer wing panels now don't fall off, and the spar attachment in the centre of the aircraft is much stronger than the original. So the aircraft can carry stores, and you are able to pull symmetrical 6.4G in with the aeroplane, although I don't because I'm too old. But anyway, the history of this aeroplane is that it was brought into Australia in the late 80s by Keith Death and Cole Pay. They bought 16 of them from Laos, stuck them in containers and brought them here. 12 of the aircraft still operational in Australia. There are 14 T28s in Australia altogether, but 12 of them are D models. It's the largest concentration of D models in the world, actually, in Australia. This is the only one that's in camouflage. Most of the other ones are painted up like USAF tarts. They don't look too good to me, but this one's original. The aircraft was then fell into the hands of Bill Pike, who then tore it to pieces and started a rebuild, which never quite got finished. Bill Hamilton got a hold of it. They finished the rebuild, and then in 2000, when the fuel crisis came along, the aircraft got contaminated. So it then suffered a mini rebuild, and then I bought it off Bill, and we did a complete rebuild from the middle of 2007 until the middle of 2008, whereupon we decided to fly it across Australia. So this is the story of the flight. That's what the aeroplane looks like, and I have it out the front here, so anybody that wants to go out there and actually touch it or climb on it, you can. It's pretty indestructible. So the route was from Sydney down to Griffith. It looks like Canberra, but it was actually Griffith. I decided that I'd do the first leg on my own because it's across tiger country, and at that stage the engine had only done 3 hours. So I thought that if it was going to quit, I'd really like to be on my own, because if we're going to go into the trees, it probably would be fairly unforgiving. But when I got down to Griffith, I actually flew over the top of Griffith, and there was a Saab on the end of the runway, the engine's running, and 2 really big white helicopters there. And this guy on the Saab was being a pain, so I had a bit of a talk to him to get him to get off the runway. So subsequently he did, after I'd gone around about 3 times, very expensive on fuel. And then I landed in the middle of the largest drug bust in Australia's history in a camouflaged ex-military aeroplane, when they just arrested a whole heap of people for having 3.2 tonnes of ecstasy. The helicopters belong to the Australian Federal Police, and if you ever see them, you'll know them, because they've got no registration marks on them, they've got nothing. And there's all sorts of guys, all dressed in big black suits with big guns. And the interesting thing was, about 2 minutes after I landed, a guy in a Yak 18 landed. We got away with that. Anyway, we went from there to Mildura and then down to Adelaide. The aircraft's actually capable of 600-mile legs, but my backside's not capable of 600-mile legs, I've got to tell you. The seats in the aeroplane were very early model ejection seats, and they are very hard on the backside. They're not armed these days. We don't need to. We stopped overnight in Adelaide, and then decided we'd then tackle the next day. The reason why I went out to Port Augusta and not across the water was I figured that, unlike Captain Sullenberger, if I had to go into water, I didn't think that the thing would make it. I thought that bloody great heavy engine on the front was only going to go one way. So we went up to Augusta, and then across to Ceduna, out to Forest, Kalgoorlie and home. Interesting, the only time we ever got any grief from anybody was at Kalgoorlie, when we were filling the old girl up, and she actually uses quite a bit of fuel. And the guys in the survey aeroplane, in the Fugo aeroplane, were getting very antsy about how long we were taking on the Bowser. The actual elapsed airspeed, or the ground speed right across Australia, was 203 knots all the way. The aircraft cruises at about indicated 200 knots in economical cruise. That was me. I don't wear overalls anymore, they're too bloody hot. The aircraft's actually very easy to get ready to fly. It's a very simple aeroplane, despite the fact that it's quite large. It's not much harder than a normal general aviation aircraft to get to prepare it. It uses oil. Kills mosquitoes. It's a big round engine. Big round engines use oil, and it does use a reasonable amount of oil, although it has quietened itself down since we overhauled it.
And it leaks.
And it leaks, yeah. It does all those things, yeah. Anybody that's had anything to do with the coders will know exactly what it's like. The aircraft is actually very easy to operate on the ground. It's got nose wheel steering, believe it or not. Electric nose wheel steering, although it's hydraulically powered. And up on its tippy toes. It rotates off the ground at 86 knots, fairly comfortably, and climbs out at 130 at about 3,000 feet a minute. And tucks itself up nice and neatly very quickly. The gear comes up in 4 seconds, which is neat. As I said, the instrument panel in it is F86, pretty much the same as the very early Sabres, so that the only bit that's different is this bit down the bottom here where the rotating bits are. But even the engine instruments were made as close as it possibly could be, so that it looked just like a Sabre. I think you'll see there we're cruising along, 200 indicated, 30 inches manifold, 2,000 RPM, jollying through the sky. It was a bit interesting, actually the weather at Ceduna and the weather in Adelaide was a bit interesting, and it's a bit, when you go to cross Australia in an old girl like this, you've got to have a bit of respect for age. The gyros in the aeroplane were sort of 50 years old, and there was no way in the world that I was really keen on getting inside any of that stuff with old gyros. It's just the story of the aeroplane. As I said in the beginning, it was a Raven. It's I actually have 2 gun packs for the aeroplane. I don't put them on because it slows it down. But it is an ex-combat aeroplane, and all the combat switching here you'll see when if you climb up on the aeroplane, it's all in the middle here and across the bottom of the panel. The engine's a Wright Cyclone, 1820-86. It develops 1425 horsepower at 52 inches. We don't actually use that much these days. You just don't need it to get it off the ground. You only use 46 inches. It's 8,600 pounds, which is reasonably heavy, plus 6 minus 2, and cruises 200 knots on about 200 litres an hour. That's fuel, yeah, it's fuel. Yeah, but it's great fun, I've got to tell you. It'll carry 2 Zumi pods, 2 500-pound bombs, and 2 gun packs each. Each gun pack has 250 cal machine guns in it. Maintenance, it's actually a very easy aeroplane to maintain. The cowls all open up easily. It's just like opening the bonnet on your car. You open it up and there's even a little built-in thing to hold the cowl up, so it's a piece of cake as long as you've got a ladder. And that was just after we brought it over. We had it down here for some reason or another. And that's about the story. So there you are. Anybody got any questions, I'll answer them, but the aeroplane's out the front, we can have a look at it after this.